So I was lucky enough to go and see Polite Society early, and man, between this and Rye Lane, it's beautiful to see UK cinema having its own sort of renaissance right now. Not only that, but both are featuring cultures very underrepresented in UK cinema and cinema as a whole, but are very important to British culture and society as it is today. In this case, it being the Pakistani and Muslim community, and in general the South Asian communities as a whole. It is kind of crazy to me that in all the media we have in the UK, very rarely does it focus on these communities. The best we have is like Man Like Mo Bean or some of the Get Some Fucking Gogglebox. But I'm glad that now we have a movie that does, and it isn't making the representation its focal point. The focal point is the story and the style. The style is batshit, by the way. To say that the director, Nida Manzoor, hasn't directed any movies before this and her only real credits are a short film and a season of a low-budget sitcom is insane. Every choice directing wise comes off as completely senior, like she's been doing it forever. Everything is so silly and whimsical, it's not taking itself too seriously and definitely makes fun of the signifiers of the genres it's taken from. And these genres are some weird kind of concoction between wuxia, whatever Edgar Wright does, and anime. And though it's having fun with the tropes and styles, it is never looking down or mocking them, which is important. It's giving new life and new avenue to express these mediums and show their reach of influence on a global scale. The choreography is exciting, and not just the fight choreography, but the dance choreography, which there is quite a bit of, but specifically the final dance in the third act. It's beautifully put together, and as all good fights and dances do, they tell the stories of the characters. Every one of these fights or dances has character progression and an arc, and I think it's going to be a very underrated aspect of the film. Not the choreography per se, but how well that conveys the characters and their current motivations. Last few points on the style, but the cinematography along with the costume and design is eye-engulfing. Absolutely stunning colours and dress, showing off traditional gowns and decorations, especially in the final act where it just explodes with beauty. The only thing in the style of this film that doesn't entirely work for me is the music. Oftentimes it's great where they're using a lot of older Asian songs and melodies, but then you'll have a scene with a contemporary EDM kind of pop song and it throws it all off. It doesn't feel balanced at all, which is a shame because when the music works, it works. But moving on, the style isn't everything because this film has some real substance behind it. For one, the sibling dynamic is super relatable. As we all know, I have plenty of siblings, so to see these relationships displayed in a very real way whilst maintaining the heightened reality of it all is really special. They work incredibly hard to ground all of the familiar relationships in reality despite the craziness of it all. They touch on how parents, especially second or third generation immigrant parents, don't believe that the arts or any kind of unconventional type of job role like stuntwoman is a real job prospect, which is an utter shame in real life because a lot of people don't reach their full potential because of their dreams being shot down before they could even materialize into ambition. I know this firsthand, and luckily for me, I've had very supportive people in my life ever since the beginning that counteract this, and it's a special thing to hand somebody, not even just a child but anybody, to give them external belief in their dreams despite what you may personally think is a beautiful gift. They also incorporate the cultural pressures of which I simply couldn't understand. Not being from a family of any sort of religion or cultural significance, I can't personally relate to these themes, but I do know many South Asian people and culturally diverse people who have had to deal with these pressures. And from what I can tell, it has been handled with the right sensitivity that the topic should be handled with, sort of akin to Everything Everywhere All at Once. Just the general ideas of generational trauma and tradition, peer pressure from dead people. It's all pretty great and conveys it to people like myself really well who have never had to live these experiences. However, not all the emotional substance hits. For example, they do the typical halfway friend fight when you know they're going to get back together in the final act and reunite as a team. They also have this bully angle when you know it's going to be resolved in a way that they become friends in the end. It's massively cliche, which is a shame because the rest of the movie is so clever in the way that it operates and avoids these tropes, using cliches to its advantage oftentimes. So to see it succumb to some of them is a bit sad. Maybe they would have worked better if these side characters were developed a bit more. The problem is we know nothing about these friend characters other than that they're the protagonist's friends and that's it. We don't know their likes, dislikes, quirks, trauma, talents, nothing. They don't even attempt at all with the friend characters, but they do attempt with the bully by making her dad a convict, but again there is little to no development of it, so the weight of it isn't really felt at all. But I understand that there's a lot going on in this film, so it'd be a tight fit to get it all in, but if you can't develop it properly, don't try. It only makes the audience long for knowledge you simply aren't going to give them. And as I said, there is a lot going on in this film. It switches genre so fucking much, it's crazy, but it does it so effortlessly. It of course touches on the martial arts genres as previously mentioned, but it goes into crime and mystery at some points, a little Ocean's 11 comedy, and then suddenly out of nowhere it's a fucking sci-fi thriller / horror film, and when it makes that dive and commits to that decision to become more insane, it becomes 100 times more enjoyable instantly. It also falls into parody at certain points, like there's a faux torture scene filmed like a fucking horror movie, but it's just done with waxing, and you could feel the presence of my grin from 5 feet away, it was that big. And that also goes for every single time this movie tried anything even remotely unconventional, because it just works so well. The film has a charm that I'm just attracted to. Every single ounce of the cast killed it. The direction and cinematography is bland at its worst and awe-inducing at its best. The choreography is particularly special. The genre switching is flawless, and this is one of the few films that really express how weirdly Freudian a lot of mother and son relationships are. Like, it's fucking creepy. All in all, this film is a fantastic time with some decent substance and more than decent style. It's clear that this film was made from a single vision, from writing to directing. It just understands itself so well and knows exactly what it is, and I'm very excited for Manzoor's future in this industry. So for this quick pick, I'm going to give Polite Society an 8 out of 10. If some of those side characters had a little bit more meat or the script was a little bit tighter, it could have went up, but for now, an 8 will do. So have you seen Polite Society? If so, let me know what you think of it, let me know what you think of this video. I read every single comment and reply to as many as possible, and whether it's this excitingly fresh take on the broad martial arts genre or not, as always, keep watching movies.